Only staff can participate. To begin speaking, dear Hannes, to start broadcast, yeah? 14. Okay, it's 4. I'm going now. 14. Ready? I need to start. It's time.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar about selling your accountancy practice, exit strategies. My name is Norman Younger. Nice picture of me on the front there. I'm the founder and director of Maximity, formerly known as Kensington. We are part of FD Formations Direct. Bit of housekeeping, as they say. If you've got any questions, please do not hesitate to submit them. I will try to deal with them online as I speak. Otherwise, I will contact you after the webinar, and of course you're welcome at any time, even afterwards, to make contact. Webinar should last the best part of 30 minutes, depending on questions or any other interruptions. Okay. Selling your accountancy practice, for most of you, it's something which is going to happen perhaps once in your lifetime, once in your career. Some of you may have done this a few times and may perhaps be looking to do it again and pick up a few tricks, some strategies, but I know how to do it better, and that's fine. Hopefully everybody is going to get something out of this. Okay. It's not quite as simple as sticking it in a shopping trolley as depicted on the picture, but essentially selling the practice is like selling anything else. You've got to know how to pitch the product, you've got to know how to price the product, and you've got to make sure that you're selling to the right people. Okay, so you come to this webinar. Presumably you've come to the decision, you've made the decision that selling is the correct course of action, the correct decision for you. There's nothing worse than having someone who comes to us and they're really, they're not really sure whether they want to sell. It's frustrating for us and it's frustrating for you. But by all means, if you want to have a chat with somebody, be that us or anyone else, just to get clear in your mind whether, should you be selling. Again, it's something which we're happy to do, and whatever you do about it, whoever you talk to, you have to get it completely clear you want to sell, because you don't want to be halfway down the process and then you have doubts creeping in, because that can really ruin it for everyone. And if you have a botched sale, it can ruin things so when the day comes and you really are ready to sell. It's a big decision, like I say, and it's something which you need to discuss with other people. Okay, so the first thing when you sell anything is you have to know your market. Knowing the market is what the current trends in the market are. Valuations. You're selling an item. What's it worth? Are you asking for the right kind of money? And obviously you want to know what the selling costs are. Important to go into open eyes all round. So, supply and demand, fundamental of economics, which lesson 1 in economics. One of my favourite aspects of economics is supply and demand. In a nutshell, the demand for accountancy practices outstrips the supply by around 30 to 40 to 1. I'll say that again, so it sinks in. The demand for practices outstrips supply by about 30 to 40 to 1. Now, interestingly enough, if you're a seller, it hasn't pushed your valuation sky high. It's an odd one, this, because in many markets you get a bubble when there's a lot of people chasing a small supply. What it does mean is that if you have a good practice, it will walk out quickly and you will get the right money for it, possibly a wee bit more. Mergers we haven't seen such a lot of. Similarly, partnerships, we've found less common of late. Sole traders is popular, been popular for a long time. Many of you are, of course, sole traders, and that's people want to buy a practice over, take over the practice and run it themselves rather than the seller staying in. Most of the time, not all the time. So everything's open to play for, as they say. There's total flexibility on how you can actually do a deal. Valuations. Okay, you've probably seen the letters of the alphabet, G for golf, R for Romeo, X for foxtrot, to GRF, which actually stands for gross recurring fees. So this is the basis, the fundamental of a practice valuation. It's where your valuation lies. So it's a fees basically which can be expected to come back next year, and and the year after that, hopefully, as opposed to one-off work. Now, most practices are surviving on gross recurring fees, and they've got a wee bit of work, perhaps specialist work, an investigation here, a business report, some sort of crisis management, interim management they're doing for a client, which would be a fee, but it's not recurring, and therefore it's valued in a different manner. There are some practices whose entire fees are made up of non-recurring items. They might be purely a troubleshooting practice. They might specialize in investigations. It doesn't mean there's no value, because if you can prove, for example, year on year, the last 10 years, you've been bringing in 5 cases a week regularly, that's got a value. Obviously, the buyer and seller have to work out what that valuation is, but don't just think, oh, I've not got recurring fees, therefore my practice is out in the cold. The the current multiple is averaging 1.2. I say it's averaging because you've got cases where it is worth more or it's worth less. Fire sale, a quick sale if you like, taken to the extreme where someone drops dead on a Friday and the family wants it sold by Monday morning. I kid you not, this does happen. And we've done it, okay? In such an instance, you probably get something like 0.75 or 0.8 of the value. But remember, once someone has left the Earth, this planet, the value of the practice is going to drop rapidly. Got a question just coming in from Martin from North London. Good afternoon, Martin. Thank you very much for joining us and participating. Is the valuation based on my historic GRF or my estimate of next year's GRF? Very good question, Martin. Obviously, it's based on historic, like any investment decision, but it's what's expected will also play a part. You're going to look at things like, well, what's your client's profile? If you want to leave the practice tomorrow, do the sale tomorrow, turn the key in a lot, go away, never hear from you again, is going to impact on the valuation because some clients may not be happy about that, and it's part of the managing of what we're going to do, and we're going to discuss that later on. So next year is important, but as I say with investing, past performance is not necessarily a guide to the future, but we're all bean counters, we're accountants, we look at balance sheets, we look at history. So yeah, history is important. And of course you don't want to make an estimate which is pie in the sky because you're going to have comeback on it potentially. So this is important to know where the value lies, and we've got to close the expectations gap, because we've had guys come to us and they say, I'm not selling out for less than 2 times my gross recurring fees. You can put the for sale sign up and see who comes to look at it, but if you're not going to budge, you're not going to get very many people through the door. Broker costs, again, you want to know what it's going to cost you to sell. The broker is going to ask for a percentage. We're no different. I have to feed my staff every day of the week, and therefore you have to pay me as your broker for doing that. But like everything in life, it's flexible and there's room for negotiation, but you get what you pay for. Okay, let's see what's on the next slide. This is one of the first questions which we'll ask anyone who phones us up and says, I want to sell my practice. So do you want to sell it within the year? Do you want to sell it perhaps just over a year? Or I want it sold now, or even yesterday. and that is of course going to influence how we market it for you and how you're going to sell it and what it's going to be worth, as we shall find out shortly. Now, is your practice ready for selling? There are many things to look at here. You've got your fee structure, client spread, client base. Is it an efficient practice? And my favourite is the cobbler going barefoot. Okay, as people start arriving in now to the lecture, a wee bit on the late side, welcome everyone. Please take a seat. You've just come just at the right time. One of the important things here now is your practice ready. So let's take each one of them one by one. The fee structure. Typically, we charge for our time. We sell time. Some people will be charging fees perhaps on a fixed fee basis, or perhaps some sort of percentage of what they're saving a client. This practice could be overcharging, which is preventing growth because people feel you're expensive. It could be undercharging, which means you're working inefficiently because to get the money in, you've got to have too much resources to get things out. And just not getting your money back in. And that is important because lots of buyers will look at a practice and they'll say, well, they charge on this basis and I charge on that basis, and I think I can get more money out of this practice by charging on the basis I'm used to. It's not different. So when one company purchases another company, so they see an inherent either a weakness in the target company or an opportunity for them to take one of their methods, the all singing, all dancing, way of doing things, and they think, well, we can do better and we can use this company as a vehicle for it. Client spread means things like the industries. Do you focus on one industry only? Some accountants will only deal with milkmen. I had a case of that. Other accountants are specific to the licensed trade or to newsagents, corner shops, which could be great for an accountant who wants to buy them who also specialises in that. On the other hand, you might have an accountant who wants to get into corner shops because he's been doing fish and chip shops and he sees that there's a certain overlap as far as he's concerned. Some people don't touch limited companies, some people only do limited companies. And you've got to look at that sort of thing as well. But normally, in the vast majority of cases, that is not a problem in terms of the client spread. Client base is an interesting one. Ethnicity, age and culture. You might have a client base where the clients are older people. They might be in their 60s or 70s because they grew with you when you started out in practice 40, 50 years ago. It's a great sign of a good practice with a loyal following, and it's got a value, make no mistake. But someone coming in to buy this is going to look at it and say, well, okay, let's look at this client spread here. Are there kids coming into the business? Someone's obviously a retirement age. They may have sort of lost the oomph as they're older, may not have the energy. Are they going to take the business further? Are they going to close the business? Are they going to sell it out? These are important questions, and it's something which you'll find out in your due diligence. Ethnicity is an issue. You may have a practice which specialises in a particular clients from a particular part of Southeast Asia, for example, and they may come to meetings. And what's the attraction is because staffed by people, the principal is of the same ethnic background. They might be able to talk in the mother language, which they find useful. You may find that there are tensions. We've had people where we've matched them up and we thought they were ideal matches because the surname was similar, and we found that one was of one religion, one was the other religion, surnames were the same, and they looked at each other and just parted company before the meeting started. Culture, what if you're one of these geeky sort of practices, in the IT sector or creative sector, everyone turns up to work wearing pajamas, no one's got a desk, they all work standing up. And, the clients we're introducing them to the practice is button-down ties and all that sort of stuff. It probably means it's not going to work. but obviously we try and avoid that. Certainly here at Maximity, we pre-vet all our clients, so make sure that we can sort these issues out at the beginning, and it does work, the pre-vetting. It's not in our interest to spend time on a deal which is not going to happen, and it's not in your interest. How efficient is your practice? Are you sweating the assets? Assets, I hear you ask. Well, I'm not referring to your photocopier or your telephone or your chairs and tables. I'm referring, of course, to what they call human capital. The people, the trainees, the people behind the desk. Are they working well, or are they on Facebook half the time? Are they texting? Are they turning up to work on time? Are you there? Are they being supervised? How do you use your time? Are you busy adding up trial balances where you could be building the practice? Food for thought there, isn't it? And is the cobbler going barefoot? How up to date are your accounts? How up to date is your tax? Is your bookkeeping up to date, your VAT? Because due diligence. The buyer's going to look at your books. One of the first things we tell them is when they say, where do I start? And I say, all right, just look at his VAT returns for the last 4 quarters. Look at the bank accounts and see, has the money coming in matched what's got on the VAT returns? Are they collecting their money? Are they in efficient practice? Do they follow the advice they give their clients? Or are the VAT returns actually reflecting what they're claiming? Or are they not actually raising the invoices? Okay, let's look at some methods now. Fire sale, which I did mention before. I've had a case, again, someone drops dead on Friday, once it's sold on Monday. You're looking typically there, a lump sum payment might be no clawback, might be a 3-month clawback. I mean, the example I gave of a bereavement, there will be a certain amount of sympathy from the client, so the family may allow some kind of clawback period. Clawback, just to clarify for those who are not familiar with the terms, means that when the client is not going to be there for the next billing cycle, for next year's bill, it gets clawed back, literally, it gets knocked off the sale proceeds. A traditional deal will typically have an 18-month clawback with staged payments up front, after, say, 9 months, after a further 9 months, or any time in between, depending on various variables. And of course we have bespoke deals where there's all sorts of parts, things put into it. When the seller is going to leave, does he want to leave, or she for that matter? Does he or she want to stay behind on a wage? Will they come in perhaps 1 day a week? Will they be there to meet with the clients and explain they're taking a new partner, how they're going to hand it over? Every deal is different. Well, I say the traditional, yes, it might be 18-month clawbacks and stage payments, but the nuts and bolts of the deal, they're all different. We do many, many deals, and each one is different. Okay, let's look here at some other methods. You can merge a practice. Again, we don't find it particularly popular. It is more difficult to merge it because the parties have to have equality, has to be on a par, and it's more important than ever that the chemistry is 100% correct. Chemistry is important in every deal, but a merger is even more important because you hopefully will be joined at the hip for many, many years to come. When is a sale taking place, the chemistry is broadly okay. You'll put up with a certain this or a certain that, which is not quite right, because in 6 months, you go to part company totally and the money's banked and the deal's done. Selling to staff is an interesting one. We get people phoning us up and they say, I want to sell my practice, but I've got a buyer. One of my staff wants to buy it. Okay, well, do you want help from us? Well, not really sure what to do. And someone's told them that the practice is only worth X. Is this true? Obviously, the buyer wants to pay as little as possible. But selling to staff you should be wary of. You want to make sure that they're not going to rip you off. The same token, you don't want to rip them off. Hopefully your staff have been loyal over the years, and you want to deal fairly with them. But the beauty of selling to staff is they know the practice. They know everything. They know what's and all, but they know how good your quality of your clients are. Clients are more likely to stay. Clients might not even notice you're not there. And you should unlock the best value for both parties. And think about it. You know, you've got a friend and he wants to sell his car to you. You've had this car for 5 or 6 years. Your friend knows the car inside. He knows it's not broken down. He knows how you drive the car. You know, he's not going to beat you down to the lowest price because he wants that car. On the same token, you know, you don't want to overprice it. You want to sell to your friend because you know that he's a willing buyer. So if you overprice it, he'll walk away. So it does unlock the best value. And I say the best value, I use the word value and not price because it's value for everyone. I mean, our ethos at Maximity is that we act as a broker. We broker a deal for both parties, like a matchmaker. We don't act for the buyer, act for the seller. We act to get a good value deal for everyone. And as far as we're concerned, it's a winning formula. And of course, selling to staff, there are emotional issues. You know, do you find it easy to sell to your staff? Can you bring yourself to sell to your staff? You may have to carry on working there for some time and they'll be the boss, tables turned. Question coming in from a Mrs. Noah from Manchester. Mrs. Noah, good afternoon. A local call by the sound of things. Perhaps I can wave to you out the window, you may see me. Do I need to have a clawback period if I sell to staff? Nothing is going to be changing. It's the same practice name, etc., etc., etc. Well, yes, you will need a clawback period essentially because the clawback is protecting everyone. It might be structured a wee bit differently, but it doesn't just vanish into the ether because you're selling to the staff and not to a stranger. Okay, let's continue. Consolidation models, you know, they're not really popular anymore, though I think there's someone knocking around who's trying to tout it. Never been a great fan of it myself. You've got to question how you're being paid and whether they're still going to be there in 12 months' time. But for some people, they may see it as an opportunity to grow and get some value added. I'm surprised that any risk-averse accountant would join a traditional consolidation scheme, but there's all sorts of variations of these come along every now and then, so by all means investigate it. Now let's look more on the strategy here. Why are you actually selling? Okay, what's going on here? You fed up. You had enough. There's too much regulation. Yes, I can hear you all squirming in the virtual seats there. You might want to retire. You know, if you've reached a certain age in life, you want to spend time playing golf. You might be moving. You may be married to somebody who's moving to the other end of the world for a job or moving to the other end of the country. You might want to move. So you have to look at that, and that will influence, you know, what's going to happen next, which is what do you want out of the deal, apart from money. I mean, do you want to work part-time? Do you want to work full-time? Do you want to not work at all? Do you want a lump sum of money? Or do you want an income flow over the next 5 years, perhaps? Or perhaps you'd like to reverse into the purchaser's practice. You know, that way you can retain your salary, get payments, and it eliminates some of the costs, which is the reason for doing it. Saving on costs, perhaps putting more value into your practice. Again, there's so many variables here. And let's go to strategy number 2, which I think I inadvertently put on the screen before, which I apologize for. Now, when you're planning this out, how do you deal with the staff? Which ones do you tell? And when do you tell them in the process? You know, you might find they actually wanted to buy the practice and you've gone above their head. You might find that they're going to run off to another practice because they're scared what will happen. Will the buyer close them down, close the practice down? Will the buyer make them redundant? Will the buyer want them to move? There's no hard and fast rules here, but you have to take it as you find it. And of course, more importantly, perhaps, is notifying your clients. When do you tell them? How do you tell them? You don't want flight because the value is in the client's staying. So these are things which have to be looked at further down the line once the deal is on the move. It's a tricky one, and certainly involving the staff is something which only you will know, who your trusted lieutenants are, who you can rely upon to keep them mum and to stand behind you. So let's look at the actual process. First of all, you will register with a broker so that you can get yourself out to market. There's some people know you're out there. You want the broker will match you with a suitable buyer, hopefully. We certainly screen the buyers as well as the sellers, because the last thing we want is tire kickers. And when we find something which we believe is in common, we have a chat with both parties, and what we say to them is, have an informal meeting, check the chemistry, go out for a drink, round to golf if that's what you've got in common. Game of cards if you like to play cards. Meet the buyer, get a feel for them. In the first meeting, you get a pretty good feel as to whether this is your kind of person or not. Second meeting, you're starting to get down to business, following which you'll open your books to them. This is something which is not easy necessarily for everyone to do, to open yourself up to a stranger or someone who's not a stranger, but you have to accept if they don't see your books, get behind the nuts and bolts, they're not going to buy you. So this is the hardest line to cross. But of course, there's going to be non-disclosure agreements, and let's face it, no one's going to take your client list and steal your clients. It doesn't happen. And then it's decision time for both of you. Do you actually want to do the deal with this person? Does this person really want to do the deal with you? Decision time. Again, a good broker will be there, discuss it with both parties, but it is important, crucial, that everybody is open with each other. Got a problem? Get it out now. You want to ask a question? Get it out now. Structure of the deal. Again, we've looked at that earlier on. What works for each party? Usually the structure will work around the seller. It's nearly always a seller who's got particular needs and requirements which have to be met. Then there's always some negotiation, is it worth a wee bit more or worth a wee bit less? You've got to practice perhaps with every client on standing order, the money just coming in, and there's no need to chase. The same way that typically clients have to be chased. That can put value in a practice. It does add value to it, and we have practices which do fetch more for that reason. But there could be a particular group of clients or one or two large clients which are really skewing things a bit and have to be taken out of the equation partially, and on the valuation then put back in at a different level perhaps. You've got the legals. Word of warning here, caveat, if you get a solicitor involved, do it at your own risk. The solicitor will want a king's ransom and usually doesn't understand what's going on. Some brokers will do the legals for you. Some will say, well, no, we'll help you with the legals, we'll throw it in, but take it to solicitor to check. Again, depends how easy you are with that. We've only had solicitors in, I don't know, perhaps 2 or 3% of the deals we've done. For some reason, accountants don't seem to like using solicitors. Can't imagine what it is. And then, of course, you conclude the deal. The conclusion, obviously, you fix a date, you work to that date, and then round the time of conclusion, just before, just after, hopefully you choose a good agent who'll be there to mop up any issues and concerns which might come after the deal is concluded. So, if you want to move to secure your future, you know where we are. You can click on the link, have a look at our pages. You can email us. You can telephone us, whatever you want. That concludes the webinar. Any questions, if you'd like to submit them now online, I'll keep it open for a wee bit longer. Thank you all for listening. We will be in touch with you over the coming days and welcome any questions or any comments. Question coming in from Marie Jones from Cardiff. Marie, good afternoon. Is it better to sell the shares in my practice or the group will of it? What is the difference? Well, obviously you're a limited company, your practice. Well, clearly the difference is if you're selling the shares in a practice, you're buying the assets and the liabilities go along with it, so you don't settle the clients as such. Ultimately, it all boils down to goodwill, because you're paying for the goodwill either way. The tables and chairs don't tend to command too much of a value, so it's all one and the same thing essentially in terms of the goodwill aspect. Question coming in here: when will the presentation be available? From Sarah. I don't know where you are, Sarah, but yes, the presentation will be available. We'll get that across to you. We have recorded it, and we can send across the sheets. Any further questions before we draw to a conclusion? Yep, more than coming in. Thank you from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, for the thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for putting up with me. Coming in now, another question. How does one value their organisation? Well, at the outset, you will fill in a form, a seller's questionnaire. We use that as a basis to come up with a figure. Again, we'll look at the market, and again, we'll discuss it with you. Any more questions? Okay, I'm going to close the webinar if nothing comes through in the next few seconds. Some thanks there from people, my pleasure. Okay, that concludes the webinar, and once again, thank you very much to everyone.